Welcome to Discovering.
It has been 40 years since moose were reintroduced to the Western Upper Peninsula. The population goal was 1,000 by the year 2000. It's 2025 and the moose population has stagnated in the 400 to 500 range. There are a lot of questions about our moose population, and now a new study is underway to hopefully answer them.
We're really appreciative that we have this opportunity to gather that type of information, and it can give us a much better in-depth look at what's going on with the moose population.
So sit back and relax. It's Monday night, and it's time for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
It's February 21st. A team of 40 people from the Michigan DNR, Keweenaw Bay Indian Community, and Northern Michigan University are assembled at Van Riper State Park, waiting for the lake effect snow that's falling across the central UP to stop, so airplanes with trained spotters can locate moose.
You know, we'd like to be in the air right now, but with the snow coming down, lake effect, you know, we're grounded for right now. So weather's always a challenge. Safety is paramount. We want everybody to go home at the end of the day.
While they wait, 4 aerial teams of wildlife biologists and researchers receive a safety briefing. These teams will be transported by helicopter to remote locations to fit moose with tracking collars and collect biological samples and information. At the same time, 2 ground crews who will travel by truck and snowmobile prepare for the day ahead. Inside, researchers fill darts with tranquilizers to sedate moose so teams can quickly and safely work on these 800 to 1,500 pound animals.
Sure, we had a partial day, but I want to make sure that we got darts.
Right now you're probably wondering, what is this huge project and why?
My name is Tyler Petrulia. I am a wildlife research specialist with the Michigan DNR. So the Michigan Department of Natural Resources really has a responsibility to the people of Michigan to manage wildlife populations and to be stewards of those wildlife. And so when moose were translocated and kind of reintroduced into the Western Upper Peninsula back in the mid-'80s, the goal was to have a sustainable free-ranging population. And sometime around 2010, we began to see the moose population that was growing at a fairly healthy rate start to stagnate in its population growth. And we wanted to better understand what's the role of some of those factors that could be limiting population growth across this moose population so that we can ensure that we can continue to have moose in Michigan.
I'm Diana Lafferty, and I'm an associate professor of biology at Northern Michigan University. This is a collaborative project among Northern Michigan University, KBIC, and the Michigan DNR. And my role is one of the principal investigators. I'm trying to answer the question, what factors are limiting moose population growth in the Western UP? We're invested in it because it is biological sciences, it's wildlife, and we have a really strong wildlife ecology program. And moose are, of course, important to the ecology, culture, and economy of the UP. So this is a really exciting project to get involved with.
Erin Johnston, the Wildlife and Habitat Manager for the Keweenaw Bay Indian Community Natural Resources Department. There's a lot of, stories and ties to moose historically being on the landscape. They're a traditional subsistence resource for the Anishinaabe of this whole region. And then honoring our relationship and our obligations to all orders of creation, right? That everything has a right to be here. And, you know, if they want to be here, then we should do what we can to support them living and thriving on this landscape.
Moose are an iconic symbol of the Upper Peninsula's wildness. They were here long before European settlement.
Moose are native to the state of Michigan, and particularly the Upper Peninsula. Had a reasonably robust population of moose prior to white settlement here. Far fewer white-tailed deer and far more moose. And with the changes in habitat that occurred at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, the moose disappeared, and they disappeared not only because of habitat changes, but also they were being taken for meat purposes and so forth. So that's how the moose population eventually dwindled down to just a very, very few animals.
This moose study comes 40 years after the reintroduction of moose to the Upper Peninsula in 1985, dubbed the Michigan Moose Lift. Jim Hamill worked for the Michigan DNR when moose were relocated here.
In those 2 years, there were 59 moose that were released in the Michigamme area of the West UP. That was a tremendous effort, and all the things that were taken into consideration to get that many animals moved that far and released in a healthy state is something that people should look back on and say, man, those people did a heck of a job.
Crowds of people were there to witness this historic event. Mike Holmgren was in the crowd.
And we actually had a field trip. They packed us up there to the Pashiki grade on a school day where we saw some of these moose being released out of the crates. And of course, discovering was there, you know, back when Buck Levasseur had the show, and it was a big deal. I mean, there were hundreds of people. You know, I remember in earlier years being excited just to see a set of moose tracks in the road, because it was something that was unique to this area that we didn't necessarily have in the 1970s.
Over the past 40 years, moose have made their presence on the landscape both ecologically and culturally.
Moose are an ecosystem engineer, so by browsing through their environment, choosing the kinds of plants that they eat, they are modifying their environment to better suit their needs. So as an ecosystem engineer, they play a vital role in structuring forested ecosystems. Culturally, they're important to native and non-native across the Great Lakes region. You know, they are a symbol of the wilderness. Can be an important resource, and they're an important community member as part of that animal nation. And of course, in the economy, there's lots of people that travel to the UP to be able to catch a glimpse of these majestic creatures.
UP residents and tourists enjoy capturing moose on trail cameras or photographing them when they have a chance encounter. Mike Holmgren spends a lot of time in the fall calling moose to photograph them.
The moose are in full rut. Typically in Upper Michigan starts about mid-September and runs through the first week of October. As you see a lot of my moose pictures, the moose are looking directly at me. That's because they're under the impression that there's a female moose around, right? And they're trying to figure out, well, who's making all this racket? Here's one here where I actually called a couple female, a cow and a calf. These two responded to calling efforts. So they didn't come very close to me. This was about 80 yards out.
Mike uses a moose call app connected to a large speaker he sets on top of his truck.
If you learn how to call moose, it certainly puts the pendulum in your favor. You can see I've got 3 bull grunts. I've got a number of cow calls. When you start doing this, you want to be a little bit aggressive at first. So what I'll usually do is a combination of cow calls. Like I'll do the long call. And then I'll follow with this short cow call.
Of course, the moose did not cooperate the day I was out there, but Mike and I plan to try again this fall.
This is what it's about, getting out and giving it a try. Some days you come home with a picture, other days not.
The DNR does an aerial survey every 2 years to get an estimate of the moose population.
Now we're sitting between 400 and 500 moose in the Western Upper Peninsula core range. Those early years we were seeing quite good growth, even with low pregnancy rates compared to what we see in other moose populations. And we started to see maybe 2 to 3% annual growth or even 1% annual growth in recent years. And so right now, the big concern is that our moose population hasn't really changed between that 400, 500 animals over the past decade. And so some of those concerns like parasites, disease, maybe predation, maybe climate. Do we have more moose dispersing? We are starting to see moose in other parts of the UP. We did think at one time the Western core range could hold about 1,000 moose. So maybe we were wrong in our assessment of what the habitat could hold. And so the data that we're gathering on this study is really going to help us better understand how moose are using the landscape, what habitats are they using, how does our forest management influence how moose are using the landscape, and are moose moving to other parts of the UP that we thought were maybe less suitable but have either become suitable or moose are showing us that they're suitable.
Over the past 40 years, the moose core area has shifted southwest.
It appears that the moose have sort of told us after the release where they want to be, at least in highest numbers, and that is the wooded wetland areas of the UP. In the summertime especially, they're water-loving animals and they need water also to temperature regulate.
Here in the UP, moose are at the southern end of their range.
And they're built for cold weather like this. So as we do see some warmer temperatures during the summers, that can have an impact on individual moose and their body condition, and that can impact pregnancy rates and survival as well.
And over the years, moose have dispersed even further west, like this bull spotted in Watersmeet 5 years ago. Moose sightings are also becoming more frequent in the eastern UP, especially in the Seney area.
Really what I'm hoping for is some questions to be answered as far as moose distribution across the Upper Peninsula. We know we have the core moose range in portions of Marquette, Baraga, and Iron counties, and that's where we've completed our aerial survey for a couple decades now. When I'm really interested to see over time where moose might not be known to hang out in great number, but where these GPS collars take our knowledge of suitable habitats, where moose can survive across the Upper Peninsula landscape.
Predation is also a factor. Many in the public feel wolves are the #1 cause of mortality. These photos posted on Facebook show wolves attacking a moose in the Amasa area. In 2011, the estimated minimum wolf population exceeded 600 wolves, and that estimate has remained stable at 600 to 700 wolves for the past 14 years, with the 2024 winter wolf population survey estimate of at least 762 wolves. That correlates with the moose population estimate also remaining stable for the past 15 years. Diseases like brainworm and parasites are also potential factors.
We're certainly seeing ticks on the moose, and it seems to be a few different species. So understanding what kind of pressure that might be putting on their physiology to support such a hefty tick population, all of those questions are really important for understanding the whole health of an individual moose and the population here in the UP.
One of the factors limiting moose populations, unintentionally, is us.
You know, vehicle collisions are on the rise. In the past 3 years, we've seen 47 moose hit and killed by vehicles.
We sometimes like to remove ourselves from that conversation and think that we are not part of this ecosystem. You know, we very much live within this land and within this landscape, and you know, a lot of moose are getting hit by cars, and you know, that's us. So I really hope that we do get some answers, whether it's anything we can respond to, but at least we'll just kind of know what our next path, what our path forward is. You know, can we do something, or are we just here to help the moose until they decide that, you know, they need to be further north, and that's where they go.
The goal this year is to capture and collar 20 moose. It was about noon when the planes were able to take off and located moose just south of Michigami.
So we have DNR planes that will be up in the air with spotters, and they will be looking for moose on the ground. When they locate moose that are in a suitable area to be captured, we will contact our helicopter crew. The helicopter crew is going to go up. They will be aerially darting the moose and immobilizing that moose. When the moose is sedated on the ground, they will put a mask on the moose, a head cover, make sure everything is okay with it, and then they will come and pick up an aerial team and take them to that moose for the workup.
I joined Ground Crew 1, consisting of Chad Stewart and Chad Keweenaw of the Michigan DNR, Diana Lafferty from NMU, and Jacob DeSellier from KBIC. Our crew leader is Ryan McGilvery of the DNR. With the snow depths here, we quickly learned the ground crews could not get out to the moose quick enough, and the aerial crews would be faster and have to do most of the work.
Right off the bat, the first moose, it was a challenge to get into. We're in a remote area, so it's hard to get to. There's not a lot of roads, not a lot of ways to get access to these areas. So, we were snowmobiling in several miles and, waist deep powder snow. And even from there, you got to snowshoe in, quite a ways to get to these animals sometimes too. So we have folks at the base station who are looking at our location in real time, trying to steer us where we need to get closest to the moose. So, a lot of technology and pieces to pull together and a lot of staff to make that coordination, working together with the pilots and the helicopter pilots to figure out where these moose are and try to get us on site.
The aerial crew had already reversed the first bull moose we went to. Thankfully, we did get to witness it walking away. After that, we waited for another moose to be darted nearby, and thankfully one was close enough to snowmobile right up to it.
So once we get on site, we have a helicopter crew that is already there, starting the work up on the moose, getting the collar on, starting to, check their vital rates. We collect information on their temperature, their pulse, their respiration, and their oxygen content to make sure that animal, while it's sedated, making sure it's still doing okay. So we spend a lot of time making sure those vital rates stay where they're supposed to be while we're collecting data, drawing blood samples, checking them for parasites, doing some measurements.
So the most important thing that we want is a collar on the moose. Tracking is the most important goal. While we have a moose in hand, we collect extra things because we can. The blood samples will allow us to determine pregnancy rates on the females. We'll have DNA results that we can archive and use for future studies. With measurements, we can compare our moose population to other moose populations and see how they compare size-wise, body condition, things like that. But the collar is kind of the end goal so that we can track these moose for the next 7 years.
The moose workups took roughly an hour to complete. Then the moose are injected with a reversal drug, and within 5 to 10 minutes, the moose are up and moving.
We do monitor the recovery and wait till they're off and doing fine. We don't want it to still be under some level of sedation and leave it there when it could lay its head down in the snow and impact its breathing or anything like that.
There is some amount of stress to the moose during this study. However, moose are tough animals, built to withstand a lot. Put it this way, their ancestors survived a helicopter flight and long truck ride to get here.
So collaring is a decision that we don't take lightly. It's really something that when we're putting hands on an animal, we want to be respectful of that animal and understand that it's really a privilege for us to gather that information, and we have to have a good reason why. We've just come to a point with our moose population where we need to know a little bit more about what's limiting their population growth, and lots of times that means that we have to understand those cause-specific mortality factors. What's influencing their survival, what's influencing their mortality. And to do that, we don't take that lightly, but collaring really is still one of the best ways we can get that information.
9 moose were collared in just a half day. The helicopter crew was efficient. Next week, I chat with the helicopter pilot and see how the second day of the moose capture went plus an antlered bull that Ground Crew 1, aka Team Wild West, was able to get to. That's all for tonight, and I hope to see you right back here next week for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.